Hi, I'm Kevin Keelen, and I'm a bereavement support specialist. I work at Stephy's Place Center for Grief and Loss in Red Bank, New Jersey. I've been there for about 7 years, but I've been doing grief work, for lack of a better word, for about 30 years now in different capacities. But it's my own losses in particular that bring me to do this work, to walk with people who are grieving. I lost my sister and my nephew to suicide, which rocked my world and my family's world for sure. So I do understand this particular loss on a personal level. It's when we get people together to talk about this loss that seems to be most helpful in their healing process. We have support groups in which we get people to talk about their loss, to talk about suicide, and it's amazing how helpful it can be. Our society and our culture does not handle grief or death, and particularly suicide, very well. So there's very few places we can talk about this. But having conversations about it can be very healing. Talking about our loss helps us to get it from inside to the outside. Grief is all of those feelings, the questions, the emotions, the confusion that are inside of us. And it can get bigger and bigger until we have the opportunity to talk to someone about it. Someone who doesn't want to fix us, someone who doesn't want to heal us, but someone who's just willing to walk with us. And talking to someone else who has experienced this loss can be most helpful. That's what we have found in our groups for loss to suicide. Getting people together to have conversations, to simply talk about this loss and the healing process can be the most helpful thing in their lives. I hope hearing these conversations will be helpful to you in some way. Thank you. Bob and Christine, thank you so much for hosting us and for agreeing to this interview. It's just amazing to meet a couple like yourselves, willing to share your story. I believe it'll be so helpful for others out there. You both have very different stories, even though you've been through the same tragedy. But before we go there, I'd love for you to share with us about your son Jack, his personality, his likes and dislikes, even his quirks.
Do we have enough time?
we used to say Jack was a lot. That was just the best way I could explain it. He was a lot. He was a big personality. Even as a young kid, he was the kid that was talking, joking, laughing, and used to say, "Jack, stop talking."
Physically in your presence.
He was just how he was. He was just a lot, kid. He was a good, really good kid with a very kind heart.
Yep.
I used to tell people, like, if I could describe him, like, it's a term I hate, but he's very popular. Like, people gravitated to him.
Yeah.
He was athletic. He was smart. He took a lot of pride in being smart. He took pride in being good looking. But, he was a good kid. He was a really good kid.
Yep.
What was Jack's age when he passed?
19.
19.
Yep. Yep. It was just 1 year out of high school, just entering his sophomore year into college.
He did have his struggles, right?
He did.
You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yep.
Yeah. It's funny because I wasn't an absentee dad by any stretch, but I got up every morning and went to work. And when you're a son, you confide in your mom. Like I remember if I had a girlfriend problem, I talked to my mom. And Jack, I think more often than not, talked to Christine as opposed to me. So I didn't have all the insights, but I learned as it was going on that he was struggling. He was struggling with, I think, some of the popularity things, some of the social media things that come into a kid's life, and that instant gratification and that judgment that comes from that. I think he had issues with that because he was so concerned about being liked and being popular. I know he liked that.
Would you say that it was a little sensitive?
He had moments, I can remember times he would just be crying. And I would say, "What's the matter?" And he would say, "I don't know." It was very hard to define what's normal teenage angst that every teenager goes through.
Right.
And what is something I should be like, "Oh my God, what is this?" And Bob and I would have this conversation, and I was a firm believer in this because this is who Jack was. He only told us what he wanted us to know.
Exactly.
So you could ask, and he would tell you what he think you wanted to hear. And he was very good at that. And again, because it was I don't want anybody to think any less of me.
Right.
And in fact, the day before he died, and he was really struggling, and I was like, all right, bud, well, we'll go to a doctor, we'll get back there, blah, blah, blah. And I remember him saying to him very clearly, a lot of people feel the way you feel, a lot of people. And he said to me, well, then why doesn't anybody talk about it? And the minute he said that, the night after I lost him, and I heard those words ring in my head all the time, and I say, oh, we're going to talk about it.
I just want to go backtrack a little bit of that rocky road of the early grief for you guys, because that's where I think a lot of people hopefully will be watching this when they're in that terrible place of early raw grief. I call it the ICU unit.
Mm-hmm.
When you're in that place where nothing helps, very little helps. What you did find helpful, what particularly helped you to get on the paths of, let's call it recovery or healing, that you found most helpful?
For me, it was getting back to what I knew. I knew how to go to work. I knew how to do my job. I knew how to do laundry. I tried really hard to have as much mundane normalcy in my life as possible.
Yeah.
Because the emotion is so powerful that I couldn't do it 24/7. Like, there's no way. So I would just, over time, and the time of doing the mundane things got a little bit longer every day. And that's what I did. Just like, oh, I'm going to go to work. I made it in an hour. Okay. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to go do something that I do, that I've always done. And that was it for me. And, just trying to educate myself and be open. And like I said, tried to embrace whatever was coming my way. Just whatever it was, I was just going to be very open to it.
Was there anything you read or any person that helped you get there with that, or just kind of naturally, organically happened?
I think for me it was a little bit more organic. I had loss before. I had lost my sister tragically, so I kind of knew that what was going to kind of come my way, not to the extent that it did, but I kind of knew there was going to be those days where you're just like, I can't catch my breath. Yeah. And I knew there were going to be days when I'm like, what did they sound like? Because that's part of it, which nobody tells you about that either. And you're like, what was their voice like again? So I knew that was all coming. Yeah. So I tried to just be like, okay, just whatever you have in store for me, bring it.
Wow.
And then, okay, today I did good. Today I didn't do so good. And it was okay. It was all right.
A lot of people with this loss, I've had it in my own life, my sister and my nephew. I went through what I call the woulda, shoulda, couldas, for quite a while. How was that for you guys?
I didn't do it.
She wouldn't do it.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know why? Because you're not going to take that away from me.
That's great.
I know I did everything I could with the skills that I had to take on whatever he threw my way. And if I talked to people when he was struggling, I'd be like, all right, what can I do? And I thought I was doing the best I could because I was doing the best I could. Right. So I never go there.
And my path to what I feel is healthy life now, out of grief, was way different than Christine's. And so much so that it's way different than everyone's. No two people grieve alike or feel alike. But I can tell you that I felt like there was a definite need. I didn't know where or when, but there was a definite need for me to be able to speak about Jack, about what happened to us, and about how I found a way through it. You don't get over it. When people say that, it's just hilarious. Like, get over it, you'll be fine. They mean well, but they genuinely don't know what they're saying when they say that, because you don't get over that.
When they say things like, you need to move on.
Yes.
You need to get over it.
Yes.
There is no such thing.
There is no such thing.
No.
And they have no idea what they're talking about.
And I think that it's I had my life before Jack died, and then I had my life after Jack died. And so they're two very similar, but very different.
Yep.
And, we all deal with this process differently. And my feeling is, we deal with it differently because our relationship with the person who passed was different. The way my relationship with my son was different than his dad's relationship,
Yep.
or his sisters, or his brothers. It's different. So when it's different, everybody's going to deal with it differently, and that's okay. When you read, the 10 steps of grieving, I'm like, well, I didn't have any of those.
Right.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's so important, I think, this overall message, because there are no stages of grief,
No.
right? Everyone thinks it happens in stages until it happens.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
you realize this
Yes.
doesn't happen
Yes.
in stages.
Right. No.
It's
When do I hit
fluid and
when do I hit
simple.
Right.
stage 3? Because
Right.
I'm ready. I'm
Right.
tired of this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen that way.
No.
I think what you said was really significant, that everyone's grief comes off of the relationship, and no one can have the same relationship with a person.
No.
Absolutely.
Everyone, right?
Nope.
So the grief comes right off of that. And so how did you find each other grieving differently? How were some of the ways
Well,
that you found survival in this?
I'm actually, Christine will tell you, and I think you know from experience together, I'm a talker. I need to talk about these things. I need to have a conversation that helps me, why did this happen? Why are you feeling like this? Why are you not feeling like me? Why are we not thinking and feeling the same thing? And having understood that that's not possible, we can't think and feel the same way. I had to learn that. I didn't know. I used to think to myself, I'm distraught. I'm coming apart. You're holding it together pretty good. How is that not possible? Are we not on the same level? Did we not, of course we both cared about this child the same way, but I couldn't understand it. And it took me a while. It took working through the group, and it took talking with her in a different plane, that it's very different. And it's for me, grief, pain, tragedy, death, all those things, they can be the thing that anchors you to the past. They can be the thing that you hit it and then you just stay there and you can't get away from it, because we talked about moving through. And so when you're stuck there and you feel like you're stuck there, for me, my way out, my way through was to talk. And I came to the group, and I learned how to speak to people, and I learned how to listen to people, and I learned how to make a choice, a selection. I don't want to be like this. I don't want to be stuck here in grief with that anchor to the past. It happened. There's no changing that, but I'm going to figure out a way to move forward.
Using the word choice, most people don't think there's any choice involved, that this is now a condition. And so you both, I think, came to that realization. What are some of the different choices you both made?
Well, I think, so I don't think I move through grief. I move with it. I when it's this ebb and flow of good days, bad days, I just take it as it comes. I try to be very open and just be like, okay, whatever it brings me, wherever it brings me, that's what I'm going to do. I felt very strongly, very beginning, when I said to you earlier that, nobody talks about how they feel. And I was like, oh, we're going to talk about it now. I made the decision really early on that, you know what, I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to educate myself, and I'm going to educate other people about these struggles. And it won't be for nothing, because it can't be for nothing.
That's right.
You can't lose somebody for nothing. That's,
Wow.
I look for the gift in every relationship that I have now is, what did Jack leave behind? And he left behind lots of people and lots of information. And so that's my gift. And, we have 2 kids, he had 2 older siblings, and they had to figure out a way to deal with it in their own ways. They both did it very differently, but they deal with it. And I think the most important thing for us as a family is we talk about Jack all the time.
Yeah.
It is not a subject not to be talked about. It is constantly talked about. He is brought up, we laugh, he would find this funny, or remember when he did this or whatever. So that's what I say, I take the grief with me. He's with us all the time. And that's a conscious decision, because I know a lot of people who are like, we're not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case.
Yeah, not talking about it is the scary part for me. We absolutely chose to say his name and there was a long time where it was hard for me to even get his name out of my mouth. It was brutally hard. But, you work on that and you get better at it. And to your point, Christine, I'm not through grief. Don't get me wrong, I haven't put it behind me. But what I've done is I've moved through the process of getting better for myself and to get back to living, I think is where I need to be. Because when you're in that mire of just horrible grief, you don't live in a way that you can or should. And I used to jokingly say in my group therapy class, I would say, what am I, like, I don't know, 58, 59, I got 20, 30 years left. And people would go, 30 years? I go, yeah, 30, 40 years, easy. And they would say, and I'd say, but I'm not going to be miserable for those next 20, 30, 40, whatever it is left. I'm not. So as hard as it is, and as, as hard as you have your days when you get socked in the jaw, you pick yourself up and you find your way. You have to.
So many people are dealing with this loss, and they don't know some of the basics, which is that everyone grieves differently. They don't know that there's choice involved, eventually when you get to a certain place.
Yeah.
So many things about this that we don't talk about. And I'm so glad we are talking about it.
And I think also you're never going to know what prompts you into the choice. Like for me, the trigger was that guy coming in and saying, "Oh, you're going to be miserable forever." And I was like, "Ooh, geez, I don't want to be miserable forever. I'm choosing not to be miserable forever." Yeah. And whatever it is in your situation that springboards you into, I'm choosing life. Good for you. I hope that's the thing that you can find. And if I can help you find it, whatever it is, I will. But I used to think to myself, it's really hard. Every day is really hard. And certainly there are hard days lately, but not nearly as what it used to be. And I'm living. I'm spending time with friends, and I'm doing things. I'm being outdoors. All the things that I love to do, spending time with my family. All those things are still there for me, and they're there for everyone who goes through something like this. You just have to genuinely decide that you want them to be there. You want to choose that, and that's my thinking.
How long ago was the loss now?
It'll be 7 years in August.
7 years.
How would you both describe sort of how your grief evolved? I know it's hard to look back, but it certainly has changed, right? Would you say that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I think in the beginning it's complete and utter drowning.
Yeah,
you are just
consumed.
drowning in it. And then as time goes by, and for me, you get closer and closer to the shoreline is the best way to explain it. And I feel now I'm at the shoreline where sometimes the water will hit my feet, but for the most part, that grief, that desperate is kept at bay. I have moments of where I just can't stop crying, but they're farther apart. They're a shorter length of time. So I'm learning to be grateful for the life I have because Jack isn't here, and that is a conscious decision every single day to be grateful. I wake up, I'm grateful. Would I want him here? Of course. I'm not saying what happened, I wanted it to happen. What I'm saying is I'm learning to find the gifts, to find the life that I have that I can be grateful for. Wow. And that's a very conscious decision to be grateful for everything, good and bad.
It has been said, and I truly believe it, from my own life and my own experience, that gratitude is the most healing emotion we can access in grief. And I'm hearing that from you both so abundantly. But it takes a while to get there, right?
100%.
It takes a long time sometimes. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
There are times when I am angry at him, like, oh, he's such a jerk.
Yeah.
There's other times, but then there are other times that, as a mom, I felt so bad. Oh, I'm so sorry you felt that way. Like I go through these different steps of what he must have been experiencing and think, and I think, well, you know what? I have to accept the fact that this was his choice and I have to just accept it and be like, okay, all right. So now how do I take this mess and make it my message?
Right.
Wow.
And that's what I have to do.
Yeah.
And you honor him. You honor Jack every time you get out of bed. Every
Absolutely.
with
100%.
every sentence, you're honoring
100%.
him.
Mm-hmm.
And you take him with you.
And it's not easy. And I have little gadgets. So I'll fess up now. I started making the bed, and that's just so I wouldn't get back in it.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, that'll be my thing. I'll get up and I'll make the bed and room looks great, but that's not why I did it.
Yeah.
It's because I didn't want to get back in bed and be stuck. And I was like, so that'll be my little mental game that I'll play with myself. And I used to do it all the time. I used to think of things. A song would come on the radio and I'd sing and I'd be grateful that this was a song that Jack and I shared. Or, those kinds of connections, those things that happen in life, you still get to hang on to those. And that's good. And I think to the extent that you can define it, it's human nature to sort of second guess and take that like, darn, if only. And you can if only yourself and woulda, coulda, shoulda yourself to just insanity, because it takes a while. It took me a while anyway. I mean, I all the strength in the world, and I admire that from you, to make that choice. I had to come to it on my own. I had to realize in through therapy and through talking with other people and listening to their stories that, you know what, even if I had said the thing I wished I had said, I don't think it would have made a difference. And in fact, I'm certain it wouldn't have. Maybe it might have helped Jack for one more day, but his decision to do this and the place that he had gotten to in his life, a place I will never understand. I have not yet been able to conceive it, and I truly don't want to. But to get to that place and to make that decision, and then to have just sort of be stuck there and to commit to that, I was deathly afraid of thinking of those things. And so I would say, well, I wish I should have called him on this, or I wished I would have, said this to him, or, that day that this happened, I should have texted him. And I learned that you can't torture yourself like that, because it'll go on forever. And that was part of my make a decision and choose life. And so that's how I moved through that. But I did go through it.
Yeah.
For a long time.
Yeah, you kind of have to let the needle run through the vinyl on that.
That's
right?
a good analogy, yeah.
It's for so many of us, it's inevitable, but it's hard to get away from. And eventually, hopefully, the needle does lift. You
Yep.
know? But you both set your intention to heal right away, and that's what I think is making all the difference. Plus, you refused to let Jack be defined by the way
Absolutely.
he died.
No.
Right?
No way.
His life is way more important than his death.
I think if anything, I've certainly become a little bit better person, a lot better person in the way that you do have those thoughts. You do think those things because you have a chance to say to yourself, why am I feeling this way? Or why am I feeling that way? And so you can say to yourself, be nicer, be more genuine, be more patient. Like, I'm bombing down the road and I'm mad because this guy in front of me is driving like, well, maybe he's got stuff going on. You don't know what everybody else has going on in their life. Certainly people don't know what I have going on in my life when they see me superficially. But when you talk with me and you learn what happened, there's a chance for us to maybe connect and make an exchange that says, I get it. I get it now. You get it. And that's an important thing for me too, is to be able to demonstrate that, yeah, I'm a better person for this.
Wow. That's an amazing thing to hear. I hear that a lot, and I that's what keeps me going. It's so inspiring, that your whole perspective changes, right? When this happens.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
When any loss happens, our perspective changes. When you lose a child,
Yeah.
your perspective really changes. And when you lose a child to suicide, right? So you're both different people now.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
from what I'm hearing,
But I'm a better person now. I know it.
Exactly.
I am a better person I am now than I was before he died.
I thought you were going to
know
say
that.
I thought you were going to say you're better than me. But
Well, that is, but no. No, but I know I have more patience. I'm kinder.
yeah,
I am more,
it's perspective.
I'm more aware of other people's
Yes.
feelings.
Yes.
I have people who've lost children, and I actually say, every year on these people, I ask them, when's your child's birthday? And they tell me. I said, okay. And I put and every year on that child's birthday, I just want wishing Bridget a happy birthday. Wishing Maura a happy birthday today. Because you know what? I think as a parent, your biggest fear is that people will forget the person that and they're still here with me every single day.
Right.
So I read an article once, it was like a Mother's Day thing, and they, how somebody said, I have friends that don't even know this person's name. I lost this child 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I have friends that didn't know me before then, and they don't even know to ask me because they don't know. How are they supposed to know?
Right.
And so I always try to make that really conscious effort of, especially if I'm thinking of someone, like I was thinking about you today. Because I know how powerful it is when I get a text that someone says, I was thinking about Jack today. I'm like,
Yes.
thank you for sharing that with me. That's really kind of you.
Yes.
So that I know out there in the world, there are other people thinking about my kid. How great is that? It's a horrible way that we lost our child. Horrible. But I think sometimes by people who have like a child with cancer and you're watching them slowly deteriorate. Oh my God, that's
Yeah.
awful. Or my worst nightmare, somebody abducted your child and you can't find them. Oh my God, that's awful. You know, so I always like to say, like, everybody has something on their plate they have to deal with. And nobody's serving on that plate is any worse or any harder than anybody else's because it's yours.
That's right.
This is mine.
Yeah.
I got to deal with it. That's yours. You got to deal with it. Doesn't mean mine's worse or harder or less important. It's all bad. It's
Yeah.
all stuff we have to deal with. So just be kind.
Yeah,
Just be
and we'll talk
kind.
about grief. I'll talk about grief or something with my friends. And I have a couple of friends who are, you know, I once caught in a pane of glass the person behind me. Someone had asked me, facing me, and said, "Hey, how's it going? You know, sorry about your son." And I had caught the person behind me in the pane of glass going, like, don't talk about it. And
Wow.
I was like, no, we don't not talk about it. He asked me a question about something vitally important. Maybe he'll learn something. Maybe something good will come from this and will help him and his child. So no, we're not going to not talk about it. And I actually turned around. I was like, I got this. And we did have a conversation, and it was I thought useful.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I think the people around us need cues with a loss like this.
No doubt.
They don't know what to say
Right.
or
No
doubt.
do.
100%.
What's wonderful is you're both not overly sensitive to some of the things people say because they don't know, right? I mean, that can be hurtful, but you're open to the fact that they
Sure.
just don't know what this feels like, what this is like. And you're giving them cues that you want to talk about
Yeah.
Jack. It's
Yes,
okay
of
to talk
course.
about
Yep,
this.
Yes.
absolutely.
I had a family member who actually said to me, "You got to get over this." And I was like, "Are you kidding? Were you not here when this all happened?" You know, and so yeah, you're absolutely right. You take your cues from what goes on in life, and you have to say clearly that person doesn't understand what's happening. So I can't be angry with that person. They don't, you know, they just don't know what else to say.
Somebody said to me once, another person had lost their child to suicide, and they saw me at the service, and they said, "Oh, this must bring back horrible memories." I go, "I didn't forget."
Yeah.
I was just like, "What did you just say to me?"
Right.
Like, you don't forget.
Yeah.
The feeling
Yeah.
stays with you forever. Nothing brings it back. It never goes away. But it's. I like to say sometimes it's like a box, and you put all the ugly stuff in the box, and you put the lid on the box, and you push it to the side. And I'll deal with what's in that ugly box when I want to. But for right now, I just push it off to the side. And then I'll bring it out and I'll look what's in there and I'll deal with it. And I put the lid back on and I push it off to the side. Because I can't have the box open all the time.
Right.
It's too hard. It's
Yeah.
too hard to have it open all the time.
Yeah.
But you just go along and you drag the box with you. And then I'll open you in a couple days, you know. And that's what we do.
Sometimes somebody, when you have it in the box, right, and the lid's on it, you're doing something else to function, but somebody rips the lid off the box.
100%.
Yeah, that
Absolutely.
happens.
That's part of it.
As some
That's
people
part of
don't
it.
know they're doing it. I can remember very vividly. We went to a restaurant one time, and the hostess said, "How many in your group?" She had no idea, and I was about to say 5, but we're down to 4, and that just took me off my feet. I was like, I wasn't ready for that. And I'm sure the woman looked at me in complete horror because I was like 4 and I could barely get the words out. And I was probably blubbering within minutes. And those are the things that, to your point, someone else kicks the lid off the box accidentally. And you just have to figure it out.
You never know when the triggers are going to
No.
hit, right?
Nope.
Nope.
From left to right or sideways.
No. No. And sometimes you get a pleasant one, like a song or something like that. And sometimes you get broadsided by the car again. And you just have to work your way through it.
Right.
You know, and figure it out. And they're less frequent. You know, they happen less frequently. Those moments of utter despair, they happen. Probably will till the day I die, but they're way less frequent.
Do you mind talking about some of the things like songs or things like that might have been helpful to you guys through this, or any kind of consolation that you're getting maybe from Jack?
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, there's sort of that notion of a spirit animal, right? And I just happened to look out, and there was a beautiful red cardinal right out the window, and he was just chirping along. And they have this call, and it sounds like they're saying pretty, pretty, pretty. And I used to think to myself, yeah, Jack always thought of himself as pretty darn pretty, And so I connected that with him. So now and again, I wasn't really big on signs, and I always didn't give a lot of credence to them, or I kind of discredited them, like, oh, whatever. But one time I was in just a terrible funk, and I was driving along, and this cardinal just flew right across my windshield. Not close enough for me to hit him, but close enough for me to vividly see him. And I thought, okay, this is working. I can connect with that. That's him. So I kind of hang on to that spirit animal kind of thing, and it really does bring comfort. I like it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of Jack's presence with you?
Sometimes I do.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And then there'll be a long period of time where I'm like, where are you?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Where have you been?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, oh, he was right there.
Yeah.
My daughter was, she was talking to me about, her dealing with losing her brother. And I said, well, you got to be open to the signs, Sarah. You got to just be open to it. She was just very angry. And I was a firm believer when I lost my sister and we were at her house. We kept finding pennies everywhere. I was like, oh my God, what's with all these pennies? And my one sister, she said, well, you just have to look at it like your pennies from heaven. So one time I was saying that to Sarah, and I said, Sarah, just be open to the pennies. And maybe a day or two later, she sends me a picture of her hand. It was filled with coins. I was like, well, your brother was expensive, so it's probably why he showed you all that money. She goes, I'm trying, Mommy. I said, good, you should try. He's there for you. You just have to be open to it.
Terrific.
And that's what it is. You just got to be open to it.
Yeah.
And they'll find you.
It's
His
just,
humor, always too. Humor with...
right?
Yeah.
And I think the humor comes...
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we laugh, as Christine said before, we laugh a lot about something Jack would have appreciated, or something Jack actually did or should have done, or there's a list, but it's always winds up in laughter, which is just so heartwarming to me.
Yes.
Because like I said, for the first probably year after his loss, I could barely speak his name without crying. It was just the hardest thing. And to learn to live and laugh about him now, it's just so great. It's such a great experience. I'm grateful. That I'm certainly grateful for.
And I read a quote by Rose Kennedy, and she said, I don't think you ever, the wound that is left behind when you lose a child never heals. It's just the scar gets thicker, but the wound is always there, like vines wrapped around a tree. And I was like, yeah, it's probably very true. Like the wound is always there. It just gets wrapped, and you can just less penetrates the wound. But we're blessed. We live in a nice house. We have 2 great kids that are still with us. His mom's still alive. I mean, I have so many good things.
We have
really
lots of
good
things. Lots of things to look forward to. Like I said, another 40, 50 years I'm around.
I mean, we just feel really strongly about that ultimately we're really blessed.
And you're choosing life. You're choosing to live.
Absolutely.
And honoring Jack by doing that.
Absolutely.
And by doing this. I
Yep.
can't thank you enough for
Sure.
taking
If
this
it helps
time.
somebody,
Yeah.
if losing Jack helps one person, then it was worth it.
Right.
I have a funny
It
story
can't be for nothing.
as far as having Jack
Can't
with
be.
you. So we have Jack's ashes, from his cremation. And so I said, I go a lot of places fishing or doing outdoor things, and so hiking or whatever it is. So I said, I'll just bring a little bit of Jack with me each time I go. And if, I'll just sprinkle him around. And then he was with me on the trip. So we went on this trip to New York State, and I said to my one buddy, he knows how I am. And I said, listen, run me, it's his boat. I said, run me out on the boat. I said, I'll sprinkle a little Jack around. He goes, are you kidding me? Jack would have hated this place. We haven't caught a single fish. This is awful. He goes, we're not staying here. You're not putting Jack here. We're going somewhere else. I said, okay. So how great is that? Like
it's
to have
great.
that, it's great.
Right?
And to have that ability to be that, that warm and that open with someone that you care about, it's great.
Yeah, it is.
For people, as you both know so well, early on when this first happens, it's unimaginable to be where you are for them. Mm-hmm. And so I am just thrilled that people can see where you are you know, and it's not that you've moved on. You're moving forward, and you're taking Jack
Yep.
with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I hope they can see. I hope it is something that it's inspirational or makes someone go, wow, that's a good thing. I thought I was going to be stuck here. Because you don't have to be. You don't have to be stuck. You have to find your trigger point for your choice and the thing that makes you think that this can't be it. This can't be it. If this is why you were put here, this can't be it. There's more. And you just have to find that more. You have to find the thing and strive toward it. Sometimes it's, one step up, four steps back, and you really get steamrolled. But certainly there are, there are good days ahead.
I remember early on in group, Bob, you had talked about how you weren't comfortable talking about suicide because you were afraid it might put the thought in Jack's head. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because it is a point of education. It's something I learned, and the truth is that is not the case. But I didn't know that. I didn't know by not saying the word or by having that conversation. I didn't know that was not going to be the thing that triggered him to run off and do this at that moment. I was deathly afraid that if we talked about it, it was going to be in his conscious mind and it would be bubbling right up to the surface. And for a while I was like, hey, maybe we're doing good here. Maybe we dodged a bullet. He's okay. And I am not bringing that up again. And we had a 3-hour car ride back to his school, or 2.5 thereabouts. And I never once talked about it. And I will be honest with you. I have genuine regret about not ever having said, you know what, Jack, I need to talk with you about this. Suicide scares me and Mom, and it should probably scare you. So let's have a conversation. And I don't know where it would have gone, but I didn't because I was afraid to. And, I have since learned that that's not the case, that those words and those conversations are not the things that are going to push him to that. Just like it wouldn't push anyone to that, but it's just a matter of not knowing that, and now I know, and I hope someone can learn from that.
Yeah, it's so important for parents to hear. I think it's everyone's biggest fear.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So it's actually tackling something we're most afraid of.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to end with how all of this has affected your relationship. How you've navigated through this together. In different ways. And
Well, we've been married a long time, and we've always looked at our life as like it's a scale. Sometimes someone's given 70, another person's given 30, and sometimes someone's given 60, other person's 40. But for the most part, we try to keep it at that 50-50. And we've always been that way. We've always just been kind of sure and steady, and that's how we dealt with this. Just sure and steady, and we just kept trying to be there for each other as much as we could on any given day. And we never kept score.
Yeah.
We always just did our best.
I think those kinds of things in a marriage can cause stress, and even I've read about where suicides, can make sure a marriage dissolves. Like they're the thing that pulls it apart, because there's the blame game, and there's the why didn't you do this, or how come you never told me this, or I didn't know this, or you should have said, or I should have said, or whatever it is. And we didn't go there. We just chose not to go there. We didn't have any reason to, because we had our 50-50. Our biggest concern was we have 2 other children. We have lives ahead of us. We have things to get through. There's no reason for us to blame one another. There's nothing there. There's no substance to that. What is substance is that we have one another.
you did learn a little bit, though, how to give each other space to grieve, didn't you?
100%.
Yes.
Yep. We each needed our own space, our own way to do this. I couldn't be in a room when Bob was crying. It was too much for me. I couldn't. And I said to him, my shoulders aren't big enough to carry your grief and mine. So I just can't do it. And it's okay.
Yeah, I
just
had to
couldn't do
learn
it.
that it was okay, but I had to learn that it was okay, because from my perspective, I was sharing something that we should be kind of in together. And while we were certainly in it together, we weren't in it together the way it worked in my brain. And I needed to learn that. And that's okay now. It wasn't at the time. It was stressful and terrible for me, because I felt like, oh man, I'm asking you for help and I'm not getting any. And I learned over time that that's not the case.
I didn't have any to give.
Right.
Yeah, I learned over time that
These
that's
are-
I
not
didn't have
the
any to
case.
give.
Right.
I could barely help myself.
Families need to hear this, because over and over again we expect each other to be there in a way that we just can't be, because
Yeah.
we're all in the same for lack of a better analogy, the same car crash.
Yep.
Yep.
You got to get the help from outside. You can't, if you're both in ICU, you can't get out of the bed and help each other,
Yep.
right? It has
Yep.
to come from a different
Absolutely.
source.
Yep. Absolutely.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah, but it takes a little bit of learning, right? And
You have to learn.
and a lot of love, because you have to love someone enough to give them that space.
Yep.
Bob and Christine, thank you so much for
You're welcome.
for inviting us into your home. I want to thank Jack too for giving us this
I
time.
think he would find this to be like really like seriously.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He would. He
Yeah.
Like you guys are way wrapped up in this.
Yep.
would. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
And I think you're going to be. This will be very helpful to people.
That's the hope.
All along the line of the journey of grief.
Has to help someone.
Right.
That's the hope.
Has to help someone.
Yeah.
Thank
Can't
you.
be for nothing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.